ReverendZ, and I am coming here today with some viewer mail, which is essentially a chance for me to scream at the electronic ether because I only have 3 viewers. Well, at least at the point of this video. Hopefully down the road I'll have a few more. It is the beginning of January in 2019. I have only had actually 1 response to anything. And by the way, if you hear meowing in the background, that is Mariska the Wonder Cat. Yeah, let's see. Here we go. Here, see, here's little kitty here. She wants to, I guess, be on the internet. So there you go. We'll work on your 15 minutes of fame later. But anyway, I've only had 1 piece of viewer mail thus far, and that was in response to a video which I did on the then Attorney General, Jeff Sessions, who was being thrown out of his, or there was a motion made to throw him out of his church. And I went over basically what the procedure is in his particular denomination and the fact that it was an interesting story. I cannot recall any time in the last, I can't remember any time in the last 2 decades when someone as notable as him was going through this. And generally, basically, in this day and age, if you're being thrown out of your church, it's usually for some sort of heresy, which in the case of Mr. Sessions was he was claiming that a particular Bible verse meant something that it did not. In the grand scheme of things, usually, if I had someone in my congregation that was doing this, usually I would just say to them, hey, you need to read the next verse because you're not getting the whole story, or I'd try and explain it to them in some way. Unfortunately, he was defending terrible government policy with the Bible, which, besides flying in the face of separation of church versus state, it wasn't a good interpretation of the Bible. So, this person was apparently very angry with me, suggested that I do at least one thing that I feel is physically impossible, used a great deal of profanity. Their comment was, of course, erased from the video, which was kind of sad because it was my first YouTube comment, and I don't even know how the person found me. I mean, that's just... Anyway, I don't know. But to respond to that person, I was only reporting on what was happening somewhere else because it happened so infrequently that it bore mentioning. And as far as church stuff and religious stuff goes, it was interesting because of its rarity. It was not a personal attack on him. Although, I will say that if you are a person that believes that our nation is not wealthy enough to support and to absorb our share of refugees of the world, number 1, you are mathematically challenged. Number 2, you are not following the scriptures as they are written. And it's that simple. If you believe that God wants you to keep people out of this country because they are beneath you, you're missing the entire point of the scriptures. On to happier things. I have had a couple of comments from people either in the congregation or people that I just know, which I'll include in this segment. I've already answered it to these people, but they were interesting questions, and so I felt that I would throw them in here. One is about podcasts. I have investigated a podcast thingamabob, and the current format for podcasts that I am looking at doing is my weekly sermon, and then after the weekly sermon whatever prayer requests are sent in that people wish to have prayed about publicly will be put in the video, and that the audio from the sermon and from the prayer request will be taken from the video and then put onto a podcast service. They're looking at the, let's see here. Where is that at? Oh, Buzzsprout is the name of the podcasting thingamabob, and if I understand correctly, putting it on this gizmo will get me on. Will put the podcast on iTunes as well. So the next sermon that I preach will be on. The audio will be available on that. Now, in order to keep the podcast for any length of time, you have to pay a monthly maintenance fee, which I don't currently. I've decided that I'm not going to spend all of my expendable income on this YouTube project, because it's just, you can end up spending thousands of dollars on it to get something of a wonderful quality. And the whole point of doing it was so that it would be a bit of a fundraiser for my ministry, and I hope to find some sponsors and some folks so that perhaps I can afford to do this rather than some of the other things that I have to do to support myself, because my church is relatively small. Actually, not relatively small. It's small. It's very small. And it can't support a pastor. And so I have to look for gainful employment elsewhere. Hopefully, if I make enough on this thing, I can just stick with ministry stuff. But there will be podcasts. If the podcasts support themselves, there will be a library of podcasts. Otherwise, everything will simply exist on the YouTube channel, where I don't have to pay for it to be hosted. Let's see here. Check all the notes here. Yes, and someone has also commented why I haven't posted a sermon for a while. The main reason is I am very bad at taking video of things. There are at least 3 videos where I cut my head off. There are videos where one inexplicable video where it has no audio. I don't know how I did that. I'd like to know how I did that so that I could not do it again, but I am very bad at this. There will be sermons starting next week. I have 2 that appear to be intact, and I am putting together the prayer bit, which will go after that, so that they will. And like I said, that will also be stripped off and made into a podcast as well. But my goal is to have a sermon every week. Unfortunately, I spend a lot of the time that I preach, I am elsewhere, and I can't really set up my phone in a tripod and a different church. And so I have to do a sermon. You'll notice that I'm not in a church during these sermons. I'm actually in my home office, where I have a little pulpit set up, and that's where this is one of the places that I practice what I do. And so what I'm going to have to do is have a second sermon every week, or re-preach it so that it is in a controlled environment where you will be able to hear everything. Which is another reason why I hope that on some level this ministry is useful to some people out there, and on some level can find a couple sponsors, so that it just would be nice to be spending my time just doing ministry stuff. The last thing, I'd like to thank some folks who have given items to use for this whole enterprise over the last couple of months. My long-suffering and lovely wife gave me a tripod, which is set up with this little gizmo. Prior to that, I was leaning the camera on the phone, which is, I don't have a camera, it's a phone, and I was leaning that on stuff. And that was part of the reason I was cutting off my head and doing other terrible things. Some folks also gave me the microphone that I'm wearing, and hopefully the sound is coming over better. And there is a background scaffolding that was given, and for some of these inconsequential things where I'm just sitting at my desk, I'm not going, but that will be something that I'll use over time, and or it may be something that I hang the lights. I've been told that that's something you also hang lights off of. And I'm going to make 3 or 4 of these videos, and try a couple of different things with lighting and this and that and the other thing, and we will just see how that goes. But I do want to thank the people that have supported this effort thus far. There will be a link to the Patreon thing that will appear below. And I'm told that YouTube channels make themselves worth it, or not worth it, but the way that YouTube channels reimburse you for your time is you set up these Patreon accounts and hopefully find some sponsors out there. And as of right now, it takes me many hours to edit a video, and even a very short one, because I'm very bad at it. Hopefully I will get better at this, so it won't take me 4 or 5 hours to put together one of these things. And by the same token, hopefully, if I don't have to do as much work outside of the ministry, then I can make more videos. I thank you very much for tuning in. I would like to thank all of the people that have helped me out thus far. Incidentally, all of those people, it strikes me, they did not give me permission to use their names on the internet. And, maybe they don't want to be attached to something so slipshod and amateurish. But I thank you. Mariska thanks you. And I hope you all are getting something out of this. Please keep me in your prayers. I'll be keeping you in mine. Thank you very much.